Good Governance Africa, GGA, has recently published the 2024 Governance Performance Index, or GPI. Now, this index provides a comprehensive evaluation of the state of local governance in South Africa. The index assesses the performance of the country's 257 metropolitans, districts and local municipalities with respect to their constitutional mandate as outlined in the Chapter 7 of the Constitution. Now, municipalities in the Northwest gave the worst performance, scoring 2.59 out of 5. Now, let's unpack this. We're now joined by Dr Thina Nzo, Local Governance Research Associate at the University of Johannesburg. Thank you so much for your time, Dr Nzo, and good afternoon to you. Now, this report comes, during an election year, and as South Africa also looks back into what has been achieved over the last 30 years, just your overall impressions about the latest stats that we are seeing. I mean, looking at what we've just said now in terms of what the Northwest province has scored in its municipalities, when you consider that the average across the board is 3.25, what do you make of this?
Good afternoon, Anati, and good afternoon to your listeners. As you rightfully say so, we are going through a period of electioneering. It's a very busy period because we'll be having elections at the end of May, although these elections are mainly for provincial and national government. But of course, we understand that the everyday lived experiences and the encounters of local government, when it comes to the way in which communities encounter the state, will always matter, and they will influence the way in which they can actually likely, vote in the ballot box for the provincial and national government elections. So when you look at reports such as the Governance Performance Index for 2024, it gives us an indicator, particularly in provinces such as the Northwest, which have been the poorest performing provinces over the years. And Northwest is stemming from a regime where we can say that it had been highly affected by the poor governance system, maladministration and corruption that has emanated over the years. So they are left with that institutional legacy that they are struggling to get out of, because consistently, if you look at the indicators, particularly that look at the administration and governance that are depending on the Auditor General's report, the National Treasury Section 71 reports, you find that the Northwest has been the weakest link, throughout the past 5 to 10 years. So I'm not surprised that the Northwest scored so poorly out of those reports.
I mean, when we look at the categories, that were rated during this particular report, we look at service delivery, admin and governance, planning, monitoring and evaluation, leadership and management. It scored the least score under leadership and management. I mean, that is a big one, but it's not the lowest. I mean, we've also got the Northern Cape following very closely after that, Gauteng also in the 2s, and the Free State in the 2s. I mean, the report also, of course, indicates that 66 out of the 257 municipalities are currently under administration and labeled as dysfunctional. Just staying with the Northwest, I mean, what are some of the interventions here that are needed to make sure that it is up there with some of the best performing municipalities, and of course without any surprise, the Western Cape being that province?
Yeah, we've had some municipalities in the Northwest, Unati, which had been placed under Section 139 under administration because of their poor performance. I mean, some of these municipalities couldn't even produce any audit, compliance information that was needed to be assessed by the Auditor General. And such interventions that are brought in by Section 139, we found that they were brought in at a very late stage where everything had actually collapsed in the institution of municipalities. So what is terribly needed right now is that the Department of Cooperative Governance, with respect to the cooperative nature in terms of working with the Department of Water and Sanitation, particularly particularly because remember, one of the municipalities such as Gatleng municipality couldn't even have water services in that municipality, and they had to have an intervention from the courts which compelled the municipal manager to provide water for that municipality. So these interventions are necessarily needed. Firstly, interventions that are going to deal with the administrative capacity of the municipality. The right people with the right skills should be placed in the right divisions, the service delivery divisions in these municipalities. Secondly, the financial administration. The municipalities in the Northwest need, capable officials in the budget and treasury office to support the municipality to make sure that all supply chain processes, all the other financial management and audit, particularly when it comes to audit information, and also accountability and keeping records and spending the finances that are allocated is done in a manner that will deliver the efficiency of service delivery. So you need that institutional building in the Northwest in all of these municipalities, and then move on to the accountability structures. Those are your portfolio committees, which are necessary to actually oversee the implementation and the compliance of the different divisions in the municipalities. They need to be well capacitated. So these multiple interventions need to be brought in so that the Northwest can actually perform and deliver on its constitutional mandate as a local government.
When we look at then, the metropolitan areas, I mean, we speak, of course, of some of these also, being under immense pressure. I mean, the report specifically singles out the 2021 local government elections as having played a significant part and role in some of the instability that we are seeing in some of these metros. It's singled out, of course, Gauteng province, where no single party commands a majority as an example, and isolates Tshwane as well as Johannesburg, saying that both of these metros performed in a manner that belies, the major city status. I mean, that is, of course, an indictment, particularly when you look at Johannesburg and how it is supposedly categorized in terms of being economically viable. So to what extent is good governance an issue here, or the lack of good governance an issue here?
Well, remember, if you've got political instability in hung councils, particularly in Tshwane, particularly in the city of Johannesburg, and we're also seeing this emanate quite prominently in Ekurhuleni, that affects the everyday political management that is needed, to execute the mandate of delivering services and making sure that all the different functions in the municipality are working in a coordinated manner. So it really affects that. So we are seeing this coming out from the Governance Performance Index, that these metropolitan areas are starting to score very low. And if you look at Tshwane, for example, service delivery is one of the major issues that also came out in this report. But in other metropolitan areas, you look at issues that are related to local economic development, which is problematic in those municipalities. So these are the hubs of economies. So these municipalities ought to make sure that they have their house in order to bring in the necessary confidence of investing into these economies. And lastly, I mean, look at what happened in Ekurhuleni when they were not managing to publish their audit report. That tells you a lot about the state of internal governance, the audit committees themselves, including the way in which they relate to other institutions that also have to deliver these services, such as your water services, their entities. And currently, as we know, Joburg is sitting with a water crisis, even though this is not mentioned in the good governance report. But immediately you see that this metropolitan area in the future is going to have a very bad score when it comes to its water entity, the Rand Water, not being able to deliver these services. So these internal, we call them internal institutional issues that have to do with the way in which an institution performs, which have a ripple effect in the way in which citizens perceive their performance at a grand scale.